everyone, Michael from Plant It All, and today we're going to talk about EC probe calibration. Now, the majority of EC probes that are coming from quality vendors out there are pre-calibrated in the factory, and this is great. You know, I'm a big fan of Blue Lab, and that's one of my reference probes. But my Growee system also has an EC probe built in. It's how it manages the nutrients that it deposits into my water. So, every once in a while, you may need to do this recalibration. It's pretty simple. We'll walk through all the steps. There are a couple little important details that may not be obvious if you've never done this before, but we're going to go step by step through the whole process. I'm going to point out the caveats, and then when the time comes, if you need to recalibrate your Growee probe, then you'll be all set. All right, let's take a look at the supplies we need first. Okay, first off, you need calibration solution. You're going to need a bottle of 2.77 and a bottle of 1413. I have two different brands here. The reality is that they're all pretty good, but you know, if you're buying off Amazon or another large retailer, make sure you check the history. Blue Lab products, I have never had a single issue with. All right, now temperature. Temperature is important here. So if you take a look here, 1413, there we go, 77 degrees. If you're a few degrees higher or lower on either side, the value actually changes. So you can see here's my water bath, and it is not at 77 degrees. This is because I don't want to wait all day for my solutions to come up to 77. So a little bit warmer, 90 seems to work well in my environment. So we can just put them in there and let that residual heat in the water bath bring the bottle's contents up to temperature. If you overshoot and when you test the temperature of your solutions, just leave the cap off, let it cool down. It really won't take all that long. Okay, so we're just about ready to get going here. Few supplies that you need. A thermometer. Just about any sealed thermometer will work. I really like these inexpensive instant reads. They're very quick, very accurate. Q-tips with either distilled water or reverse osmosis water. We are going to need to clean the head of the EC probe in between each of the stages. All right, you got your solutions here. They should be right around 77 degrees now. Remember, that's important. And 2 additional clean containers. We don't want to be testing directly inside of our bottles, so we're going to pour off just enough to cover the tip of the probe entirely into a separate cup, and then put it in there for the calibration. Now, one thing that's important to note here, when your bottles themselves are right around 77 degrees, they're going to maintain their temperature fairly well, especially when they're full. More mass takes longer to change temperature. So my recommendation is get these all set, then pour each one in turn when you're ready to use it into the cup, and then confirm its temperature. Now, if your temperature has gone down below 77 degrees, you can certainly put the cup gently back into your water bath, warm it up a little bit, get back to 77, or if you're over, that smaller amount of liquid in that cup is going to cool faster. All right, so let's take a look at the Growee app.
Okay, so first order of business here, we need to turn off the automations inside the Growee app. You can see I have the lit up green and purple dots in the nutrient and pH level cards. We're going to need to go into each of these, disable them so that then we can go forward and complete the calibration. Here we are inside the smart dosing, so we're going to go up to edit and then hit pause. It's going to let it confirm. Now we're going to do the same thing for pH. This time we're just hitting stop and then another confirmation that we are making changes here. Okay, inside the modify panel, you're going to see manual dosing. And under manual dosing is probe calibration. That's where we're going to do our work today. And it's going to walk us through the process. Okay, so we get a nice little set of instructions here. Just reminding us of what we already talked about in terms of the supplies that we need. So once you're sure you got it all together, go ahead and hit that next button. Here we go, we got those steps. So we're going to have to wash the probe, dry the probe, and then we dip it into the solution. One really important note here, when you dip the probe into the solution, make sure you give it a little bit of a jiggle around in the solution. This is going to help make sure that there's no bubbles on the sensor. And if there's air bubbles on the sensor, it actually could prevent it from reading properly. So get it into the solution, swish it around a little bit, nothing crazy. We are just making sure there's no air pockets on there. And then you can go ahead and hit start. Okay, here we go. We are in calibration and we've got a little timer to fill. So the important thing here is to never short this process. If you don't keep the probe submerged in the solution the whole time, you can offset the calibration, and then you've kind of negated the point of doing all of this. So after you have the probe in the solution, you've jiggled around to make sure that there's no air bubbles, just keep it there. Wait out the timer. It's going to fill all the way up, and then we're going to move on to the next step. All right, there we go, 100%. We're good to go. We got the green check mark. Let's go ahead and hit next and move on to the next step. Same thing here. So we're just moving up to the 2.7 solution. Wash the probe in your distilled or your RO water. Give it a little bit of a gentle dry off. And then you're going to dip it into your solution. And remember, jiggle around the probe head. Make sure that you haven't gotten any air pockets on there that are going to prevent the solution from coming into direct contact with the probe itself. Once you're all set, go ahead and hit the start button. Okay, same screen as before. We're just going to let that little bar fill up, keep the probe properly submerged, and you're going to be good to go. Okay, we're done. Go ahead and hit the close button on the card there. And now we can go back and re-enable all of our automations. So you can see all the values look weird. It's okay. It's going to take care of itself in just a moment. Once you go into each of the cards and reinitialize your settings, you are going to be all set. The Growee is going to take back over, and now you've got your freshly calibrated EC probe. Okay, if you ever run into an error screen like this, it's not a big deal. Just hit the stop button. You will have to rerun the whole process, so if this happens on your second solution, you are going to be doing the first again. But don't worry, it's pretty rare, but it's just not a big deal. Hit the stop confirmation, and then go back into probe calibration one last time.
And that's pretty much it. The process of recalibrating your EC probe in the Growee system is just not that hard. These steps are important though. So make sure, one, you shut down the pumps that go through your loop where the monitor is. If you don't, you're going to end up wearing some water. Make sure that you have both of your calibration solutions up to 77 degrees or reasonably close to make sure that you are actually reading the value that you and your probe are expecting to see. And then, as you're doing each calibration, make sure that you shake off any bubbles. Once you've got the probe in the solution, just give it that swish around so you don't have air pockets blocking contact to the probe. Clean in either distilled or RO water in between each solution. And then while in each of the solutions, make sure you give it that minimum of a 2-minute time frame to finish the calibration. If you short it, it's probably going to work. But longer is better, just to make sure that the probe normalizes inside the solution. That's it. Hope you find this helpful. Leave your comments and questions below, and keep growing.